Now when it comes to this video, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to talk about. Do I want to talk about how incredibly written all the characters are? Do I want to talk about the actual relationships everybody has? Do I want to talk about the Jimmy M. Preg? Anyways, I think I found a few things I really wanted to pinpoint here and just speak my mind on. So if you give me the time of day, I hope I can pick your brain a little bit and talk to you about some of the more interesting topics of the game, some of the most important topics of the game, and I hope that I could just give you some more perspective on it, because I feel like people could discuss this game for years to come, and there's so many interesting layers to it that I just love so much. So without further ado, let's really get into this, and the first thing I wanted to talk about was our main characters, Curly and Jimmy. And I know I don't have to say this, but spoiler warning, just go play or watch this game already. I don't know how you even got to this video if you haven't even heard of this game yet, but if you haven't heard of this game and you still want to watch the video, first of all, thank you. Second of all, here's one of my dogs. And third of all, just go play the game. Seriously. And just to give a little backstory on these guys before we go on, Curly is our captain, well, former captain, I guess, because he's now our mummy man of the hour in every single YouTube thumbnail for the foreseeable future, including mine. Jimmy is Curly's best friend who becomes the quote-unquote new captain after the meteor accident happens on the ship. The accident that Jimmy causes, the same accident that Jimmy blames Curly for the entirety of the game. Yeah, he's not a great guy, and a lot of things happen between these two, and the story pretty much revolves all around them. All the characters revolve around them, everything that happens revolves around them, and they're both kind of on the same coin of this story. The entire game is played through both of their eyes and nobody else's. You get to play as Jimmy during the present and Curly during the past, and it's really interesting to see how these characters talk to each other and how everything kind of goes wrong. This game could have been done in a chronological order, but I really like the fact that they did it in a bit of a random way, where you get to see events that happen from this time to this time, and nothing is truly in order, and you kind of have to piece everything together like a puzzle. I do think I much prefer this style of storytelling over anything else. It leaves you guessing, it leaves you theorizing, and it really wants you to put together this puzzle like I mentioned earlier, and when you put all the pieces together, it feels really good. And I think a lot of it is because of how incredibly well written every single character in this game is. I cared for quite literally everybody equally. I personally related to Daisuke the most. Somebody who's in his early 20s and not knowing what he wants to do in life, so he tries to find every job he can just to impress everybody around him. I really am in his situation, and I've been through it before. Swansea's a really interesting case. He's a man who was a drunk for a long time and became sober for around 10 plus years. He gets a nice shirt, he gets a credit card, and gets a family, and yet he still isn't truly happy. It kind of makes you question that whole American dream thing. Is that real, or is it just something people made up to actually feel some semblance of happiness? And last but not least, possibly the strongest character in the entire game when it comes to sheer willpower, Anya. She goes through so many trials and tribulations throughout everything, and she just keeps on going. God, I love the characters in this game, and the amazing character writing makes every single moment in this story so hard to get through, because you care for them so much, and to see everything that happens to them just hit you straight in the gut and twists the knife 27 times. Seriously, give me a break here, man. And like I said before, the story revolves around two specific characters in this. You could make the argument that it revolves around everybody, but things don't actually happen without these two, and it's Jimmy and Curly. It's so fascinating to me to see how people treat Curly. He's in such a black and white lens with most people, when in reality, none of the characters in the game should be seen that way. Not even Jimmy. And yet time and time again, I keep on seeing people throw Curly into the simplistic good or bad umbrella. I really don't understand it. He's way more complicated than this. Possibly the most complicated character in the entire game. I really think he's more in the middle. He's a morally gray character in my opinion. He had the best intentions at heart, he wanted to please his entire crew, but at the same time he just made way too many mistakes. What are those mistakes? Not hitting the nail on the head when he needed to in the first place. By the time he found out that Jimmy took advantage of Anya, that's when he should have acted. But something in the back of his head possibly told him to not do anything right away, and what that reason is exactly, I'm not too sure. But the objective truth is that Curly failed as a leader, he failed to protect his crew, and with compassion there are boundaries that need to be set. And Curly didn't realize this until it was way too late. He completely enabled Jimmy and got taken advantage of in the process. There were so many moments Curly could have gone out of his way to stop or punish Jimmy before things got worse, but he didn't. Instead of hitting the problem directly from the start like he should have, his mental turmoil prevented him from doing so. From refusing to do Jimmy's psyche evaluations to asking why there's only one room with locks on the doors, Anya herself couldn't put enough red flags up for Curly to see, and yet he still didn't take immediate action. I want to bring up the dead pixel scene here because I think that's one of the most important scenes in the entirety of the game. If Curly would have done something right here at this point, everything would have been resolved, but considering that he didn't, this was his last and final mistake here. When he and Anya are sitting in the lounge and she points out a single dead pixel being on the screen, Curly says he can't see it. At this point, she is quite literally crying for help in such a soft-spoken way, and Curly still can't see the monster Jimmy truly is due to them being friends for so long. Jimmy, in my opinion, is that dead pixel. This really felt like Anya's last plea for help. The entire time they've been on the ship, Anya makes her discomfort towards Jimmy clear, and this scene feels like the final chance Curly has to actually do something, yet he still doesn't. And this right here feels like the final nail in the coffin for not just Curly, but for everybody else. After this is when he takes the full brunt force of the crash. He becomes a useless vegetable and watches his decisions slowly kill each and every member of his crew. Curly is a victim just like the others, yes, but he is absolutely to blame for what's been going on. This endless amount of consoling and almost protection Curly gave Jimmy is what allowed him to be a complete monster. Jimmy's an unstable guy. All of his decisions throughout the story progressively get worse and worse every time. It's almost impressive to see how he outdoes himself when trying to solve problems as the self-proclaimed new captain of the Tulpar. Jimmy spent his entire life running from all of his problems. He's a man who's never truly accepted his faults and thinks what he does is always right. He's a complete polar opposite of how Curly was as a leader, yet he still thinks he's doing all the right things. He's so stuck in this delusional mindset that he's making everything right when everyone is just dying in front of him one by one. Jimmy is an empty shell of a man who adopts this mindset of another man he's been leeching off of during their entire friendship. He sucked all the kindness and empathy Curly had to offer, and knowing there was no escape from this after learning he and the crew were getting fired, he directed the Tulpar into the asteroid, being the real perpetrator of the crash like I mentioned earlier. The fact we're forced to play as him during the game might be the most difficult part. We watch everyone suffer through his eyes, forcing Curly to shove painkillers down his throat, berating Anya and making her feel like a useless failure of a nurse, pouring mouthwash into Daisuke's wounds after making him crawl through a dangerous vent, and basically poisoning Swansea to knock him out unconscious before shooting him straight in the eye. Bar none, take responsibility is the most important messaging in the entire game. We quite literally see it everywhere from beginning to end. And I don't think it just applies to Jimmy and Curly either. I think it applies to everybody. Think about it. Anya was one of the strongest people on that ship. She used her incredible nursing skills to keep Curly going with an extreme lack of medical supplies they had left. She failed to get into nursing school so many times and still kept on trying. She was still willing to keep on treading after what Jimmy did to her as well, even after finding out she was pregnant. She fought so hard, but people can only fight so many battles on their own until they break. To say she took responsibility is just putting it lightly in my opinion. Daisuke himself had a bright future too. He tried everything he could to impress everyone and show not only others around him his usefulness, but also to prove to himself that he can be the hardworking man his parents want him to be. He talked all about how his mother would tear him down and call him a complete slacker, and now that he's genuinely trying to work hard to make a name for himself, guess who uses this ambition to lead him to a much early grave? Jimmy. Swansea's another one as well. Swansea was the one who had to do the mercy killing, and to say Swansea took responsibility? Oh my god. He was the man who had to do the mercy killing to Daisuke after he was injured. Swansea was keeping the room with a cryogenic chamber locked away the entire time post-crash, and a lot of people theorized what that was going to be used for. Was it going to be for him? Was it going to be for somebody else? And to me, I think it was to give Daisuke an escape more than anybody else. Swansea saw that kid as his own hypothetical son. Under all the anger and dismissiveness he had towards Daisuke, under the surface he really just wanted him to escape and enjoy his life more than anybody else. I couldn't imagine how it could have felt to take the life of the person you wanted to save the entire time. And to keep on going with Swansea, his final monologue hurts, man. Whether it actually did happen or not in the actual story, because there's a lot of people who have conflicting feelings on if this is a genuine event that happens in the game. But regardless, the way he explains on how taking the right paths in life made him feel less happy than when he was a deadbeat drunk genuinely makes me feel horrible for him. But he still did it nonetheless. He did it not for his own happiness, but for the people who mattered the most, his family. And then, all of it was taken away by a gunshot from a man who promised to fix everything. A man who wanted to take responsibility. A man who thought he was doing the right thing. And just like that, we're acquainted with our team here. A team that Jimmy, being the new captain of, is trying to make things right with. And look at what he did. It's time to cut the cake. Jimmy gets the first slice. Wanna know one thing everybody's demise had in common? Jimmy. Now that we're only left with him, we spend the rest of this game dealing with his hallucinations of what he's done. What hurts the most about these is we see depictions of every character in these scenes except for Anya. She gets little to no representation, and her ID is even blocked off from the others when we get to the hallway full of them. Instead, we see the child Jimmy forced her to bear, and not the person that he violated to get that child. Jimmy trying to cope with his actions and further dilute himself is just aggravating to sit through, man. I just hate it. God, I hate it. I need to see my dogs. Hold on. Alright, I'm back. Jimmy is a victim of his own self at this point. He's convinced he's doing the right thing the entire time. He's convinced he's taking responsibility in his own delusional way. He apologizes to Curly, the man who enabled his behavior, his best friend, the man he's been leeching off of basically for the entirety of this game. Do you guys want to know the worst part about this game? It's the fact that Jimmy technically won. He succeeds in taking the ultimate cowardice route, refusing to fix any of the problems he's caused in his entire life, thinking that putting a mutilated husk of what used to be Curly in a cryogenic chamber was his redeeming moment, ending himself with one more bullet. Jimmy got his own happy ending in a very sick and twisted way. Curly watched the man he called his best friend walk over the corpse of the woman that he assaulted to take the gun that she locked away specifically to keep away from Jimmy. All he could do was laugh to himself at this point. Jimmy is a monster, and now Curly's finally accepted it. Anya once said, "I have to believe our worst moments don't make us monsters." This quote resonates with me a lot, because even after everything that's happened, she still believed anybody can change themselves regardless of their actions. Take in mind, really, take in mind here, she still thought there was good inside of Jimmy. She still thought that he could have changed. And the little bit of hope that she had obviously didn't work out in her favor, but at the end of the day, if the victim of this, the person who absolutely went through the worst possible outcomes in this, still thinks that there's good inside of the person that basically ruined her, that says a lot. That says so much about Anya as a character, and I think that's why she's my favorite. Now, I just wrote this up just to wrap things up a little bit here and just end on a pretty alright note, I feel. Here we go. Mouthwash kills 99.9% of germs. Anya, Swansea, and Daisuke all acknowledge the 0.1% they have to deal with in their lives, and it's what makes them strong. Curly is a man who doesn't even accept the 99.9% but instead wants the 100%, thinking of anything he can do to get to that impossible goal, and as he tries, the 0.1% slowly tears him down to the point he got to now. Curly failed to acknowledge the dead pixel, the 0.1%, and in doing so he doomed not only himself, but everybody else except for the 0.1%. Jimmy. As people, we need to acknowledge that not all problems can be solved equally, and you can never really please everybody. We need to make difficult decisions in life that may end relationships which sting now, but will be better in the long run. In the end, I hate to say it, but we truly just need to take responsibility. And on that note, I think that's a wrap on this video. I think I'm satisfied with what I made. Of course, this could be way longer than it is. I could go into way more subjects, get way more in depth with things, but it's already taken me long enough to actually get this video out, and I think I'm pretty satisfied with what I have. If you made it this far and you made it to the end, thank you so much. Here's an extra picture of my dogs here. I love them a lot, and I hope you do too as the days go by, because you'll be seeing a lot more of them. Anyways, again, I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, share, all the usual stuff. I swear, videos will not take as long as this one to make, I promise. Alright, I'll see you later. Have a great morning or night or whenever you're watching this. My name is Shen, and it's been real. Love you. Next time on Shen Zero.